A Diary of an African Husband. Episode 6, The Storm Before the Calm. Cunnel woke up to the sound of Titi's laughter echoing from the living room. For a moment, the warmth of her giggles made him think that everything was back to normal. But as his eyes adjusted to the light streaming through the window, reality settled in like a heavy weight on his chest. Ada wasn't beside him. Her side of the bed was perfectly made, untouched, as if she hadn't slept there at all. He sighed, running a hand over his face. The silence between them had stretched like a canyon, and every attempt to bridge it felt futile. He dressed quickly, opting for a simple white shirt and black trousers. As he stepped out of the room, he saw Ada in the kitchen, her back to him, her movements sharp and deliberate as she prepared breakfast. "Good morning," he said softly, standing by the door. "Morning," she replied without turning around. Cunnel's heart sank. Even her tone felt distant, like a stranger speaking out of politeness rather than love. He wanted to say more, to ask her how she was feeling, but the words stuck in his throat. "Daddy, come play with me." Titi's voice rang out, breaking the heavy silence. She was seated on the floor, her toys scattered around her. Cunnel forced a smile and walked over to his daughter, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "What are we playing today, Princess?" "We're having a tea party," she said excitedly, handing him a tiny plastic teacup. "Mommy said she's too busy to join us." Cunnel glanced toward the kitchen, where Ada was wiping down the counter. He could feel the tension radiating from her even from across the room. "Well, then it's just you and me," Cunnel said, trying to match Titi's enthusiasm. But his mind was elsewhere, consumed by the growing chasm between him and his wife. Later that afternoon, Cunnel found Ada in the backyard, hanging laundry on the line. The sun cast a golden glow over her, and for a moment he was struck by how beautiful she looked, even in her simplicity, a plain white blouse and a black wrapper tied around her waist. "Ada," he began, stepping closer. She didn't turn around, her hands busy pinning a shirt to the line. "What is it, Cunnel?" "We need to talk," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Talk about what?" she replied, finally looking at him. Her expression was guarded, her eyes tired. "About us," he said. "About what's happening to our marriage." Ada let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Now you want to talk? After all this time?" "I've been trying, Ada," Cunnel said, his frustration seeping into his tone. "But every time I try, you shut me out." "Do you know why I shut you out, Cunnel?" she snapped, turning to face him fully. "Because you don't listen. You think saying sorry fixes everything, but it doesn't. Your actions don't match your words." Cunnel felt a sting of guilt, but pushed forward. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I've hurt you. But I can't fix anything if you won't tell me what's wrong." "What's wrong?" Ada repeated, her voice rising. "Cunnel, you've taken me for granted for years. I'm tired of being the only one fighting for this marriage while you sit back and act like everything's fine." Her words hit Cunnel like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond but found himself speechless. "Do you even remember the last time you truly appreciated me?" Ada continued, her voice breaking. "The last time you saw me as your partner, and not just the mother of your child?" Cunnel's mind raced, memories flooding in, moments where he could have done better, where he should have paid more attention. He realized how many times he had let his pride or his work take precedence over his wife's feelings. "You're right," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been selfish. I've taken you for granted. And I'm sorry, Ada. I truly am." Ada's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. "Sorry isn't enough, Cunnel. I need to see that you're willing to change, not just say it." "I am," he said, stepping closer. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just tell me how to start." Ada looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening slightly. "Start by listening, Cunnel. Really listening. And start by showing me that you value this family as much as I do." Cunnel nodded, a sense of determination rising within him. "I'll prove it to you, Ada. Not with words, but with actions." Ada didn't respond, but the tension in her shoulders eased just a little. It was a small step, but it was progress. That evening, Cunnel decided to take the first step in rebuilding their connection. After putting Titi to bed, he found Ada in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Ada," he said, standing in the doorway. She looked up, her expression wary. "Can we pray together?" he asked, his voice tentative. Ada hesitated, then nodded. They knelt side by side on the living room floor, the silence between them replaced by the soft murmur of Cunnel's prayer. He prayed for forgiveness, for strength, and for the wisdom to be a better husband and father. As he spoke, Ada felt a tear slide down her cheek. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope, a tiny crack in the wall she had built around her heart. When Cunnel finished, he looked at her, his eyes filled with sincerity. I know it'll take time, Ada, but I'm willing to do the work if you'll let me. Ada nodded, her voice barely audible. Time. That's all I need right now. Over the next few days, Cunnel made good on his promise. He started helping more around the house, taking Titi to school, and even surprising Ada with small gestures. A bouquet of flowers, her favorite meal, a heartfelt note tucked into her Bible. At first, Ada was skeptical, waiting for him to slip back into his old habits. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to see the change in him. One evening, as they sat together watching Titi play, Ada reached out and took Cunnel's hand. He looked at her in surprise, and she smiled faintly. Thank you, she said simply. Cunnel squeezed her hand, his heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you for giving me another chance. The message. Marriage isn't perfect, it's messy, complicated, and full of challenges. But it's also a partnership, a commitment to love and support each other through the highs and lows. Cunnel and Ada's story is a reminder that love isn't just about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard, and never giving up on the bond that holds a family together.